Subscribe for the full story.
My children only visited me once a year to ask for money, so I wrote them out of the will and left everything to the nurse who visited me daily. They'd arrive like clockwork, a perfectly orchestrated symphony of forced smiles and hollow greetings. The air would thicken with unspoken expectations, a palpable hum of what-ifs and whens. Before a cup of tea was even poured, the questions would begin, cloaked in feigned concern. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button, give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. My children. It felt strange to even use that word sometimes. They were the products of my body, yes, but the connection had frayed, worn thin by years of distance, and what felt like, to me, a deep-seated indifference. For years, their visits were the highlight of my calendar, at least, that's what I told myself. I'd prepare, clean the house until it gleamed, bake their favorite cakes, and lay out my best china. I'd wait, a hopeful knot in my stomach, for the sound of their cars pulling into the driveway, and they would come. My son, David, always immaculately dressed, his tie perfectly knotted, a faint scent of expensive cologne clinging to him. My daughter, Sarah, with her bright, often too loud laugh, her hair always styled in the latest fashion. They'd hug me, quick, perfunctory embraces that felt more like checking a box than offering genuine affection. "Hello, Mum," David would say, his eyes already scanning the room as if assessing its worth. "Oh, it's so good to see you, Mum," Sarah would exclaim, her voice a little too high-pitched. Then the pleasantries would flow, a superficial river of conversation about the weather, their jobs, their latest holiday. I'd listen, trying to find a genuine spark of interest, a true desire to connect. But it was like trying to find water in a desert. After a while, the talk would inevitably drift. "You know, Mum," David would begin, his tone shifting subtly, becoming more earnest. "Things are a little tight for us right now. The market's been a bit rough." Or Sarah would chime in, her lower lip trembling ever so slightly. "It's just that little Leo needs braces, and you know how expensive they are, Mum." And I would oblige. I always did. I'd go to my study, the room that had been my sanctuary for so many years, filled with the books I'd read and the memories I'd cherished, and I'd write out checks. Not small checks, either. I'd worked hard my entire life. My late husband, Robert, and we'd built a good life. We'd saved, we'd invested, and we'd managed to accumulate a comfortable sum. It was meant to be our legacy, a way to ensure our children and grandchildren would be secure. But it felt like I was just a walking ATM, a convenient source of funds for their seemingly endless needs. Their visits would end as abruptly as they began. A quick hug goodbye, a promise to call that rarely materialized, and then they'd be gone, leaving behind the faint scent of their expensive perfumes and the echoing silence of their absence. I'd sit in my armchair, the empty teacups a testament to their fleeting presence, and a familiar ache would settle in my chest. It wasn't just the disappointment of their superficiality, but a deeper sadness, a longing for the kind of family connection I saw in other homes. The easy affection, the shared laughter that didn't have an ulterior motive. After they left, the house would feel even larger, the silence more profound. I'd find myself staring out of the window, watching the leaves fall, wondering what had happened to the little children who used to run into my arms, who would tell me their secrets and draw me pictures with crayon hearts. Where had that love gone? Had it ever truly been there, or had I just imagined it, fueled by a mother's hopeful bias? These annual visits, as predictable as the changing seasons, were the only real contact I had with them for most of the year. Birthdays were acknowledged with a generic card, Christmas with a token gift ordered online. There were no spontaneous phone calls, no invitations to dinner, no offers to help with the garden or the grocery shopping. It was a one-way street, and the traffic had stopped flowing from their side entirely. I understood they had their own lives, their own families, their own busy schedules. I truly did, but it was the asterisk way they managed their lives, the way they prioritized their own needs and desires above any semblance of familial duty or affection towards their aging mother, that truly stung. It felt less like busyness and more like a calculated avoidance, a gentle sidestepping of any responsibility that might inconvenience them. Then there was Maria, my nurse. She arrived not once a year, but 5 days a week, like a beacon of warmth and genuine care. She didn't have perfectly styled hair or expensive clothes. Her uniform was practical, her hands were often chapped from washing, and her smile was tired but radiant. She came not because she had to, but because it was her job, and she did it with a grace and compassion that I had almost forgotten existed. Maria's visits were different. They weren't scheduled like a business meeting. They were a part of my life, a consistent, comforting rhythm. She'd arrive with a cheerful, "Good morning, Eleanor," and immediately start assessing how I was feeling, not just physically, but emotionally. She'd ask about my sleep, if I had any pain, and then she'd settle into a routine of checking my vitals, administering my medication, and helping me with my morning exercises. But it was the moments in between, the quiet interludes, that meant the most. While she was preparing my breakfast, she'd chat about her day, her family, her dreams. She'd ask about my past, not in a way that felt like an interrogation, but with genuine curiosity. She'd listen intently as I recounted stories about Robert, about my youth, about the challenges and triumphs of raising David and Sarah. She never rushed me, never looked at her watch. She made me feel heard, seen, and, most importantly, valued. One afternoon, as she was helping me to sit up in my chair, she noticed a photograph on my bedside table. It was a picture of me and Robert on our wedding day, young and full of hope. "You were so beautiful, Eleanor," Maria said softly, her voice filled with a genuine admiration. "And your husband? He looks like a kind man." I smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached my eyes. He was everything. Maria then asked, "What was your favorite thing about him?" It was a simple question, but it unlocked a floodgate of memories. I found myself talking for a long time about Robert's gentle nature, his unwavering support, his infectious laugh. Maria sat on the edge of my bed, her eyes fixed on mine, her presence a comforting anchor in the sea of my recollections. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. She just listened, her quiet attentiveness a balm to my soul. Sometimes, if I was feeling particularly low, she'd bring in a small bunch of flowers from her own garden, or a freshly baked cookie she'd made. She'd sit with me, not as a caregiver, but as a friend, sharing a quiet cup of tea. These moments, small as they were worth more than all the money my children ever asked for. They were moments of genuine human connection, of shared humanity. It was during one of these quiet afternoons, after David and Sarah had paid their annual, transactional visit and left me feeling hollow, that the idea began to form. A seed of thought, planted in the fertile ground of my growing disillusionment and burgeoning gratitude. The contrast between the hollow exchanges with my children and the warm, genuine presence of Maria was stark, undeniable. It wasn't just about who visited more often, it was about who saw Eleanor, the person, rather than just a source of potential financial benefit. I sat in my armchair, the lingering scent of my children's expensive cologne, a mocking reminder of their visit, and a quiet resolve began to solidify within me. I had earned my comfort, my security, and I had always intended to pass it on to my family. But what was family if it was built on a foundation of expectation and obligation rather than love and reciprocity? What was an inheritance if it was bestowed upon those who had shown no genuine interest in the giver, only in what the giver possessed? The thought wasn't born of anger or resentment, but of a clear-eyed pragmatism. I was an old woman. My time was limited. I wanted to ensure that what I had worked so hard for, what Robert and I had built together, would go to someone who truly appreciated it, someone who had shown me kindness, compassion, and respect. Someone like Maria. The decision, once it settled in my mind, felt not like a punishment for my children, but a reward for Maria. It was about fairness, about recognizing true value. It was about leaving my legacy not to those who merely claimed it by birthright, but to someone who had earned it through acts of genuine kindness. The thought brought a strange sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction that began to outweigh the ache of my children's neglect. The ink on the revised will was barely dry when the phone rang. It was David, his voice laced with that familiar blend of urgency and entitlement. "Mom, darling. Just wanted to check in. Sarah and I were thinking, with the holidays coming up, it would be lovely to get together. Maybe a little something to help with the travel expenses. You know how it is." I listened, my heart as still and quiet as a winter lake. I pictured him, impeccably dressed, his perfectly knotted tie, a symbol of his carefully constructed life, a life I had, in many ways, helped to build. I thought of Sarah, her bright, too loud laugh, her carefully curated image, and the always-present request for braces or school trips or a down payment on a new car. "David," I said, my voice calm, measured, and, for the first time in years, utterly devoid of the hopeful tremor that used to betray my longing. "That's very thoughtful of you to think of me." A beat of silence on the other end. "So, about those travel expenses?" he prompted, his tone shifting, the carefully veiled anticipation now more pronounced. "I'm afraid I won't be able to help with that, David," I replied. "My financial situation has changed rather significantly." Another, longer pause. This one was more disbelieving than anything else. "Changed? Mum, what are you talking about? Are you unwell?" The question was laced with a familiar concern, one that always seemed to coincide with a financial inquiry. "I'm fine, David, perfectly fine. It's just that I've made some rather significant decisions about my assets." I could almost feel his mind whirring, trying to decipher my words, to understand this unexpected deviation from the established order of things. "Decisions? What kind of decisions?" he pressed, a note of impatience creeping into his voice. "I've revised my will," I stated simply, a sharp intake of breath. "Revised your will? Mum, you can't be serious. Who else would you leave your things to?" "It's us, your children." The possessiveness in his tone, the inherent assumption that my hard-earned wealth was automatically theirs, was almost comical in its audacity. "Well, David," I began, choosing my words carefully, "I have decided to leave my estate to someone who has shown me consistent care, affection, and genuine support over the years, someone who values my presence, not just my possessions." "Who are you talking about?" His voice was tight now, suspicion replacing the feigned concern. "Maria," I said, the name feeling like a warm caress on my tongue. "My nurse." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator in my kitchen. I could imagine the shock, the outrage, the sheer disbelief that must have coursed through him. I pictured him sputtering, his perfectly knotted tie suddenly seeming absurdly out of place. "Maria, your nurse?" he finally managed, his voice incredulous. "Mom, that's insane! She's just a hired hand. She's not family." "And what, David, has family meant to me lately?" I asked, my voice still calm, but with an edge of steel. "Is it the annual visit, the transactional exchange, the carefully worded request for funds? Is that what family is now? Because if it is, then no, Maria is not family, but she has shown me more love and respect in a week than you two have in a decade." He started to protest, to argue, to try and rationalize, but I cut him off. "David, the decision is made. It's final. I have spoken to my lawyer. You can call him if you have any questions, but I'm afraid he'll simply confirm what I've told you." "Mom, you're making a terrible mistake," he blustered. "You're being taken advantage of. We'll come over right now. We need to talk about this." "No, David," I said firmly. "You won't be coming over. And there's nothing more to discuss. I've made my wishes known. Now, if you'll excuse me, Maria is due to arrive soon, and I wouldn't want to keep her waiting. Goodbye." I hung up the phone, a strange lightness settling over me. It wasn't the giddy joy of revenge, but the quiet satisfaction of having reclaimed agency over my own life and my own legacy. The years of feeling like a mere ATM, a forgotten fixture in their busy lives, had finally culminated in this decisive act. The days that followed were a strange mix of anticipation and a curious sense of peace. The phone remained silent. No calls from Sarah. No dramatic attempts to talk sense into me. It was as if, with my announcement, I had ceased to exist for them, except as a potential source of wealth, a source that had now dried up. I didn't expect them to understand. Their worldview was built on entitlement, not empathy. Maria arrived as usual, her smile tired but genuine. She noticed the slight shift in my demeanor, a subtle lift in my spirits. "You seem happy today, Eleanor," she commented as she helped me with my morning medication. I smiled. "I am, Maria. I truly am." I didn't mention the phone calls, the fallout. It felt unnecessary, a relic of a past I was finally leaving behind. The following weeks unfolded with a quiet rhythm. Maria continued her diligent care, her presence a constant source of comfort. We talked, we laughed, we shared silences that were filled with understanding. She'd bring me little gifts from her garden, a sprig of lavender, a ripe tomato, a handful of berries. These small gestures, born of genuine thoughtfulness, meant more to me than any grand pronouncement of affection. One afternoon, she was helping me sort through some old photographs. We came across a picture of my grandchildren, David's son, young Thomas, and Sarah's daughter, little Emily, as toddlers, their faces innocent and beaming. A pang of something akin to regret flickered through me. Not for my decision, but for the lost potential, for the family that could have been. Had love and effort been a two-way street? "They're so cute," Maria said softly, her voice tinged with a hint of melancholy. "Such bright, happy faces." "They were," I replied, my voice a little rough. "They were wonderful children. But children grow up, and sometimes they forget where they came from. Or, perhaps more accurately, they forget who was there for them, all along." Maria looked at me, her expression one of gentle understanding. She knew, of course, about my children. I had shared snippets of my life with her, the good and the bad. She never judged, never pried, but her quiet presence had always offered a silent validation of my feelings. "It's a shame when that happens," she said simply. "When people don't see the value in what they have until it's gone." Quote, "The word gone hung in the air between us. It was a word I had come to understand deeply in recent years. Gone were the days of easy affection. Gone were the spontaneous visits. Gone was the unwavering belief that family would always be there, a constant source of comfort. What remained was the quiet strength of my own spirit and the unwavering kindness of Maria. As my physical health continued to decline, Maria's role became even more integral to my life. She wasn't just a nurse. She was my confidant, my companion, my connection to the outside world. She'd read to me, tell me about the latest news, and even help me with my correspondence. When I felt too weak to hold a pen, she'd sit beside me, my hand resting on hers, and together we'd draft letters, emails, and even the occasional short message to faraway acquaintances. There were moments, of course, when the silence from my children felt like a physical ache. Days would pass without a word, and the absence would gnaw at me. I'd find myself wondering if they were truly happy, if they ever paused to consider the woman who had given them life, who had nurtured them, who had sacrificed for them. But those moments of doubt were fleeting, quickly dispelled by the reality of Maria's unwavering presence. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves outside my window turned to shades of gold and crimson, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The house, which had once felt so vast and empty after my children's visits, now felt warm and lived in, filled with the quiet hum of Maria's presence. We were sitting in the sunroom, a cup of tea warming my hands, Maria recounting a funny anecdote about her mischievous cat. "You know, Eleanor," she said, her eyes sparkling with amusement, "Mr. Whiskers tried to help me bake yesterday. Let's just say the flour ended up more on him than in the bowl." I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh that felt foreign and yet wonderfully familiar. It was the kind of laughter I hadn't experienced in years, the kind that wasn't forced or tinged with expectation. "Oh, I can just imagine," I replied, my own laughter bubbling up. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the sun and the comforting presence of a true friend, I realized something profound. My children had sought to inherit my wealth, a tangible legacy, but in their pursuit of material gain, they had overlooked the immeasurable value of human connection, of genuine care, of simple, unadulterated kindness. They had sought to claim what I possessed, but they had missed out on what I truly was. My decision to rewrite my will wasn't an act of spite, it was an act of affirmation. It was a declaration that love and care are currency far more valuable than money. It was a recognition that a life built on genuine connection is a life well lived, and that its legacy should be entrusted to those who understand that truth. As my strength continued to wane and the days grew shorter, I found myself reflecting on the choices I had made. There were no dramatic confrontations, no tearful reconciliations. My children remained in their self-imposed silence, their absence a testament to their priorities. And that was all right. I had found a different kind of family, a family forged not in the crucible of blood, but in the quiet, unwavering light of compassion. The lawyer visited again, this time to finalize some details. Maria was present, her hand resting gently on my arm. I looked at her, my heart filled with gratitude. She had been a beacon of light in the twilight of my life. "Eleanor," the lawyer said, his voice respectful, "everything is in order. Your wishes have been clearly documented." I met Maria's gaze, a shared understanding passing between us. It wasn't about the money. It was about the life that had been lived, the lessons learned, and the quiet, profound beauty of human connection. My children had asked for money, and they had received a different kind of inheritance. The inheritance of consequence, the understanding that true wealth lies not in what you accumulate, but in who you become and who you choose to share your life with. And in Maria, I had found someone who understood that, and who, in her own quiet, unwavering way, had shown me what family truly meant. The house, once a monument to my children's neglect, was now a testament to a different kind of love, a love that was earned, not inherited, and a legacy that would be cherished, not squandered. The afternoon sun, slanting through the conservatory windows, cast long, warm shadows across the polished floor. Eleanor, frail but with a spirit that seemed to glow brighter with each passing day, sat nestled in her favorite armchair. Maria, her movements a gentle ballet of efficiency and care, was preparing a pot of Earl Grey, the familiar aroma filling the air. The house, which had once echoed with the hollow silence of neglect, now vibrated with a quiet, contented hum. It was a symphony composed of the soft clinking of porcelain, the rustle of newspaper pages, and the occasional comforting sigh that escaped Eleanor's lips. David and Sarah remained ghosts in the periphery of Eleanor's life. Their silence was a testament to their priorities, a void that had once caused Eleanor profound pain, but now, mercifully, felt like a gentle breeze passing by. She didn't harbor anger. Anger was an energy too volatile for her fading years. Instead, there was a quiet acceptance, a serenity that bloomed from the soil of self-possession. She had chosen her path, and while it had led her away from the familiar, it had led her towards something infinitely more precious, genuine human connection. The lawyer had confirmed the final arrangements weeks ago. The revised will, a document that had once been a source of immense anxiety and a testament to a mother's desperate attempts to secure her children's affections, was now a symbol of liberation. It was a testament to her autonomy, a quiet declaration that her life, her hard-earned assets, were hers to bestow upon those who had earned her trust and her love, not simply by the accident of birth, but by the deliberate, consistent act of kindness. Maria, whose presence had gradually transformed Eleanor's twilight years from a lonely descent into a warm, comforting embrace, was more than just a nurse. She was the keeper of Eleanor's stories, the listener to her whispered regrets and her burgeoning joys. She had a knack for knowing when Eleanor needed a gentle hand to hold, when a shared silence was more eloquent than any conversation, and when a perfectly brewed cup of tea could mend a weary soul. "Mr. Whiskers is plotting another raid on the biscuit tin," Maria announced. her voice laced with affectionate exasperation as she placed the steaming teapot on the small table beside Eleanor. "He's developed a rather alarming connoisseurship for shortbread." Eleanor chuckled, the sound a soft, melodious ripple. "That cat has more refined tastes than my own son, I'm afraid." She paused, a flicker of something. Not regret, perhaps a gentle wistfulness, crossing her features. "Though I suppose David's tastes were always more practical, always geared towards the next acquisition, the next investment." Maria settled into the chair opposite Eleanor, her gaze steady and empathetic. She knew, without Eleanor needing to articulate the unspoken history, the deep well of disappointment that had marked Eleanor's relationship with her children. She had seen the flicker of hope extinguished by curt phone calls, the warm invitations met with polite but firm refusals, the pleas for connection answered with calculated requests for financial assistance. "He doesn't see what he's missed, Eleanor," Maria said softly, her voice devoid of judgment, simply stating a truth. "He's looking at the destination, not the journey. And you, my dear, have always been about the journey." Eleanor nodded, taking a slow, appreciative sip of her tea. "It's true. I used to chase their approval, their attention. I thought if I could just provide enough, be helpful enough, they would see me. Truly see me. But they saw a resource, a bank account. And that's a very lonely place to be." The conversation drifted, as it often did, to the simple pleasures of the day. Maria spoke of the market, the vibrant colors of the autumn produce, the surprising sweetness of the first parsnips of the season. Eleanor, in turn, shared her memories of a childhood picnic by a sun-dappled river, the taste of wild strawberries still vivid on her tongue. These were the small treasures that Maria unearthed, polishing them with her attention until they gleamed with renewed brilliance. One afternoon, Maria found Eleanor poring over an old photo album. The pages, brittle with age, were filled with images of a younger Eleanor, vibrant and full of life, surrounded by her children. There were birthday parties, school plays, summer holidays. The smiles in the photographs seemed almost impossibly bright, a stark contrast to the muted tones of Eleanor's current reality. "Look at this one," Eleanor murmured, her finger tracing the image of a young boy, his hair tousled, his eyes alight with mischief. "Thomas. He had such a beautiful spirit once. So curious, so eager to learn." Maria leaned closer, her breath catching slightly. "He looks so happy here. You must have had wonderful times." "We did," Eleanor confirmed, her voice soft. "And then, life happened, I suppose. Or perhaps they simply forgot how to be present. It's a subtle kind of erosion, you see. The small neglects, the unanswered calls, the canceled visits, they build up, like silt, until the channel of communication is completely blocked." Maria's hand, warm and comforting, settled on Eleanor's frail arm. It was a gesture of solidarity, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken pain. "You never gave up on them, Eleanor, even when they gave up on seeing you." Eleanor turned her gaze to Maria. Her eyes, though clouded with age, held a depth of wisdom and a quiet strength. "Perhaps that was my mistake, Maria. Perhaps I invested too much hope in a harvest that was never meant to be sown. But then," she paused, a gentle smile touching her lips, "life has a way of surprising you. It has a way of offering you a different kind of harvest, one that is sweeter and more nourishing than you ever anticipated." She gestured towards the window, where the late afternoon sun painted the garden in hues of gold and amber. "This," she said, her voice imbued with a profound sense of peace, "this is my harvest. The quiet beauty of the day, the warmth of a good cup of tea, the steadfast companionship of a kind heart. These are the true riches." As the weeks turned into months, Eleanor's physical strength continued to ebb. The illnesses that had plagued her earlier years seemed to gather momentum, her body a frail vessel holding a spirit that refused to be extinguished. Maria's role evolved from caregiver to a true companion, a steady presence in the encroaching twilight. She would read aloud, her voice a soothing balm, from Eleanor's favorite novels, her fingers deftly turning the pages. She would recount the day's events, weaving narratives of the world outside the quiet confines of the house, a world Eleanor could no longer actively participate in, but could still appreciate through Maria's vibrant descriptions. There were moments, of course, when the silence from David and Sarah felt like a tangible weight. Days would pass, then weeks, without a single word. Eleanor would sometimes find herself staring at the silent telephone, a pang of something akin to longing, or perhaps just a residual ache stirring within her. She'd wonder if they were happy, if they ever paused to think of the woman who had given them life, who had nurtured their dreams, who had sacrificed so much for their comfort and their futures. But these moments of introspection were fleeting, like shadows passing over a sunlit landscape. They were quickly dispelled by the undeniable reality of Maria's unwavering presence, her quiet dedication, a constant, reassuring anchor. One crisp autumn afternoon, the air alive with the scent of wood smoke and decaying leaves, Eleanor felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The house, which had once felt like an echoing monument to her children's indifference, now felt like a sanctuary, filled with the quiet hum of Maria's presence. They were sitting in the sunroom, a cup of steaming chamomile tea warming Eleanor's gnarled hands. Maria was recounting a hilariously disastrous attempt by her new kitten, a fluffy ginger menace named Marmalade, to scale the curtains. "Honestly, Eleanor," Maria said, her eyes sparkling with mirth, "he went up like a tiny, furry mountaineer." And then, of course, he realized he had absolutely no idea how to get down. It was quite the spectacle. Lots of indignant meowing and a rather spectacular tumble onto the rug. Eleanor laughed, a genuine, hearty sound that seemed to resonate through the very bones of the old house. It was a laugh that felt foreign, yet wonderfully, blessedly familiar. It was the kind of laughter that wasn't forced, wasn't tinged with expectation, or laced with the brittle veneer of politeness. It was the pure, unadulterated sound of joy. "Oh, I can just imagine," Eleanor replied, her own laughter bubbling up, a cascade of soft, delighted sounds. "That little rascal! You spoil that cat terribly, Maria." In that moment, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, surrounded by the comforting aroma of tea and the warmth of a true friendship, Eleanor realized something profound. Her children had sought to inherit her wealth, her tangible legacy, believing that material possessions were the ultimate measure of success and love. But in their relentless pursuit of financial gain, they had inadvertently overlooked the immeasurable value of human connection, of genuine care, of simple, unadulterated kindness. They had sought to claim what she possessed, but they had utterly missed out on what she was. Her decision to rewrite her will, the act that had sent ripples of shock and indignation through her estranged offspring, was not an act of spite or revenge. It was an act of affirmation. It was a clear, unambiguous declaration that love, loyalty, and consistent care were currencies far more valuable than any monetary sum. It was a recognition that a life built on genuine connection, on shared moments and mutual respect, was a life well lived, and that its legacy, its story, should be entrusted to those who understood that fundamental truth. As her strength continued to ebb and the days grew shorter, Eleanor found herself reflecting on the choices she had made. There were no dramatic confrontations, no tearful reconciliations. Her children remained in their self-imposed silence, their absence a stark but unmournful testament to their priorities. And that was all right. She had found a different kind of family, a family forged not in the crucible of blood, but in the quiet, unwavering light of compassion and shared humanity. The lawyer visited again, his presence a solemn but comforting ritual, to finalize the last of the administrative details. Maria was present, her hand resting gently on Eleanor's frail arm, a silent gesture of unwavering support. Eleanor met Maria's gaze, a shared understanding passing between them, a wordless acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the life that had been lived, the lessons learned, and the quiet, profound beauty of human connection that had blossomed in the unexpected soil of her later years. Her children had asked for money, and in their own way they had received a different kind of inheritance, the inheritance of consequence, the stark realization that true wealth lies not in what you accumulate, but in who you become, and, perhaps more importantly, in who you choose to share your life with. And in Maria, Eleanor had found someone who understood that truth intrinsically, someone who, in her own quiet, unwavering way, had shown Eleanor what family truly meant. The house, once a silent monument to her children's neglect, was now a vibrant testament to a different kind of love, a love that was earned, not inherited, and a legacy that would be cherished, not squandered. It was a legacy of kindness, of resilience, of the enduring power of a compassionate heart. As the autumn drew to a close, and the first whispers of winter rustled through the bare branches of the trees outside, Eleanor's breath grew shallower, her movements slower. Maria remained by her side, a constant, gentle presence. She held Eleanor's hand, her own fingers interlaced with the fragile ones, a silent promise of continued presence. "You know, Eleanor," Maria said softly, her voice a tender murmur, "I remember when you first told me about the will. I was so surprised. And then I was so touched. It felt like a validation, not just of my work, but of our connection." Eleanor's eyelids fluttered open. Her gaze, though dimming, still held a spark of her indomitable spirit. She managed a faint smile, her lips barely moving. "You earned it, my dear. Every bit of it. You saw me. Truly saw me." Her voice, a mere whisper now, carried the weight of a lifetime of experience. Don't ever let anyone tell you that kindness is a weakness. It's the strongest force in the universe. It's the currency of the soul. Maria squeezed her hand gently, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "I won't, Eleanor. I promise." The silence that followed was not an empty void, but a space filled with shared memories, unspoken gratitude, and the quiet affirmation of a bond that had transcended the transactional nature of employment. Eleanor's breathing grew more labored, each inhale a conscious effort. "Marmalade," she whispered, a faint smile returning to her lips. "He'll miss his shortbread." Maria chuckled, a soft, heartfelt sound that was almost a sob. "He'll miss you more, Eleanor. We all will." As the last rays of the afternoon sun faded, casting the room in a soft, ethereal glow, Eleanor's eyes closed for the final time. Her hand, still held in Maria's, grew still. The silence that descended was profound, yet not desolate. It was a silence steeped in peace, in the quiet knowledge that a life, though marked by the sting of parental neglect, had ultimately found its true wealth not in the inheritance of money, but in the inheritance of love, loyalty, and the profound beauty of a genuinely chosen family. The house, once a symbol of Eleanor's isolation, was now a testament to her ultimate triumph. The triumph of the human spirit, the enduring power of compassion, and the quiet, unwavering legacy of a heart that learned to love again, even after it had been broken. Maria, the inheritor of Eleanor's legacy, stood by the window, gazing out at the darkening sky, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, a silent tribute to the woman who had taught her the true meaning of wealth, and the enduring strength of a love that asked for nothing, but gave everything. The final chapter of Eleanor's life was not written in the language of obligation or entitlement, but in the eloquent prose of kindness, and the quiet, enduring melody of a grateful heart. The ensuing weeks after Eleanor's passing were a delicate dance between grief and quiet practicality. Maria, her movements still infused with the same balletic grace and tender efficiency, navigated the solemn duties that followed. The house, Eleanor's sanctuary, now held an even deeper resonance. Each object, each sunbeam, a silent echo of the woman who had so recently graced its rooms. David and Sarah predictably made their appearances. They arrived, not with the urgent haste of sorrow, but with the measured precision of those attending to necessary business. Their faces, etched with a practiced solemnity, held a distant, almost detached air. They spoke of arrangements, of probate, of the practicalities of estate division, their voices devoid of the raw emotion that Maria felt prickling at her own eyes. Maria observed them with a quiet, unvarnished clarity. David, ever the pragmatist, seemed primarily concerned with the tangible assets, his gaze flicking over the antique furniture and the paintings on the walls with a proprietary glint. Sarah, more outwardly emotional, wept polite tears, but even those seemed to carry a faint undercurrent of self-pity, as if the loss was an inconvenience rather than a profound void. Neither seemed to grasp the true inheritance Eleanor had intended to bestow. They saw the revised will as a final, perhaps even punitive statement from their mother, a stark indictment of their past neglect. They did not see it as the liberation it truly was, a testament to Eleanor's enduring strength and her unwavering belief in the power of earned affection. The lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, a man whose own professional detachment was a comforting balm in the midst of such familial tension, met with them in the study. The air in the room was thick with unspoken accusations and the lingering scent of Eleanor's favorite lavender potpourri. Maria sat discreetly in an armchair by the window, an observer in the unfolding drama, her presence a quiet anchor amidst the tempest of their estranged emotions. David cleared his throat, his voice a dry rustle. So, Mr. Abernathy, regarding the primary estate, Mother was always very judicious with her investments. I assume the portfolio is substantial. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with a lace-trimmed handkerchief. It's just so hard to believe, David. Mother, she never truly understood our struggles, did she? The pressures we faced. Maria's breath caught. Eleanor had never spoken of struggles in the context of her children's lives, only of their relentless ambition, their insatiable drive for more. It was a subtle distortion of reality, a convenient narrative spun to mask a deeper truth. Mr. Abernathy, with his unflinching gaze, began to read. He detailed the distribution of assets, the bequests to various charities that Eleanor had supported throughout her life, the local animal shelter, the historical society, the scholarship fund for aspiring artists. He spoke of the house, the contents, and then he arrived at the most significant portion of the will. And finally, Mr. Abernathy announced, his voice resonating with quiet authority, the entirety of Mrs. Eleanor Vance's residuary estate, including the bulk of her investment portfolio and the residual funds from the sale of her private art collection, is bequeathed to Maria Rodriguez in recognition of her unwavering devotion, exceptional care, and the profound companionship she provided during Mrs. Vance's twilight years. A stunned silence descended upon the room, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. David's jaw went slack, his carefully constructed facade of practiced grief shattering into pieces. Sarah let out a choked gasp, her handkerchief fluttering to the floor. To Maria? David stammered, his voice laced with incredulity and a dawning fury. This is preposterous. This is a mistake. Sarah's eyes, wide with disbelief, fixed on Maria. You manipulated her. You took advantage of her when she was vulnerable. Maria met their accusations with a steady, unwavering gaze. There was no defensiveness in her posture, only a quiet certainty. She had not manipulated Eleanor. She had simply offered Eleanor the very things her children had withheld: genuine affection, unwavering support, and the simple, profound gift of being truly seen. Eleanor made her own choices, Maria said, her voice calm and clear, cutting through the rising hysteria. Her decisions were her own, and they were made with clarity and purpose. David stood, his hands clenching into fists. This is an outrage. We will contest this will. This is an insult. Mr. Abernathy interjected, his tone firm but measured. Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance, I assure you, the will has been thoroughly vetted. It is legally sound and reflects Mrs. Vance's explicit wishes. The circumstances surrounding its revision were thoroughly documented and witnessed. Any attempt to contest it would be ill-advised. Sarah, tears now flowing freely, turned to Maria, her voice raw with a mixture of anger and hurt. How could you? After everything we did for her? The sacrifices we made? The irony of Sarah's statement hung heavy in the air. Maria's gaze softened, a flicker of pity entering her eyes. You believe you made sacrifices for Eleanor, Sarah? Eleanor made sacrifices for you. And when she needed true connection, you were absent. I was here. I listened. I cared. Eleanor found her family in me, and I found mine in her. The meeting dissolved into a chaotic flurry of indignant pronouncements from David and Sarah, punctuated by Mr. Abernathy's quiet, persistent attempts to maintain order. Maria, unmoved by their vitriol, simply sat, a silent testament to Eleanor's final, profound act of self-possession. She had, in her own quiet way, reclaimed her narrative, and in doing so had bestowed a legacy that transcended mere monetary value. As the days transitioned into weeks, the initial shockwave of David and Sarah's reaction gradually subsided, replaced by a cold, simmering resentment. They made no further attempts to contact Maria, their silence, a deafening confirmation of their priorities. They had, in their own eyes, been wronged, their inheritance usurped by an outsider. They could not comprehend that Eleanor had not merely given her wealth away. She had entrusted to someone who had proven herself worthy. Maria, meanwhile, began the process of fulfilling Eleanor's final wishes. The house was a treasure trove of memories, each room holding a story. She carefully catalogued Eleanor's beloved books, her collection of delicate porcelain figurines, the worn leather armchair that had been Eleanor's constant companion. She found herself speaking to Eleanor's spirit, sharing her decisions, her thoughts, as if she were still present. The financial inheritance was substantial, far more than Maria had ever imagined. It was a sum that could change the trajectory of her life, offering a security she had only ever dreamed of. But as she sat in the quiet of Eleanor's sunroom, the afternoon sun warming her face, she realized that the true inheritance was not the money itself, but the trust it represented, the profound affirmation of Eleanor's belief in her. She began to implement some of the modest plans Eleanor had discussed, projects that had been too ambitious for Eleanor's diminishing physical capacity, but were now within Maria's reach. She funded the expansion of the local animal shelter, ensuring that more stray creatures would find comfort and care. She established a small foundation to support emerging artists, providing them with the resources and encouragement Eleanor had so readily offered her. One afternoon, Maria received a letter, not from David or Sarah, but from a distant cousin of Eleanor's, a woman named Beatrice, whom Eleanor had occasionally mentioned in her stories, a woman who had shared childhood memories and youthful adventures. The letter was brief, a simple expression of condolences and a shared remembrance of Eleanor's vibrant spirit. It was a small gesture, but it resonated deeply with Maria. It was a reminder that while Eleanor's immediate family had failed her, her spirit had touched other lives, other hearts in smaller, less dramatic ways. Maria decided to reach out to Beatrice. She wrote a long, heartfelt letter, detailing not only Eleanor's final years but also sharing anecdotes and memories that painted a vivid portrait of the woman they both cherished. She spoke of Eleanor's wit, her resilience, her unwavering capacity for love, even when faced with disappointment. It felt like a continuation of Eleanor's own mission, to foster connection, to nurture relationships, to ensure that her story, her essence, lived on. The response from Beatrice was immediate and effusive. She remembered Eleanor's infectious laugh, her mischievous twinkle in her eye, the way she could always find the silver lining in any cloud. She expressed her own regret at not having maintained closer contact, a sentiment that Maria understood all too well. Together, through their correspondence, they began to stitch together a more complete tapestry of Eleanor's life, filling in the gaps that her own children had so deliberately left blank. The house, once a monument to Eleanor's isolation, was slowly transforming. Maria had retained many of Eleanor's treasured possessions, but she had also begun to infuse the space with her own presence, her own quiet sensibilities. She kept Eleanor's favorite books on the shelves, but she also added new titles, books that spoke of her own interests, her own evolving understanding of the world. She continued to brew Earl Grey tea in the mornings, but she also introduced her own preference for strong, robust blends. It was a delicate balance, honoring the past while embracing the future. One evening, as Maria sat by the fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows across the room, she reread a passage from one of Eleanor's favorite novels. Eleanor had underlined a particular sentence: "The truest measure of a life is not in the accolades it receives, but in the quiet, persistent ripple of kindness it leaves behind." Maria felt a profound sense of understanding wash over her. This was the essence of Eleanor's legacy, the quiet strength that had defined her, the enduring impact of her compassionate heart. David and Sarah remained a distant, almost spectral presence in Maria's life. They had sent formal letters to their lawyers, and those lawyers had communicated with Mr. Abernathy. The exchanges were brief, perfunctory, and entirely devoid of any personal sentiment. It was clear that their connection with Eleanor, and now with her estate, was purely transactional. They had sought to inherit her wealth, but they had forfeited the opportunity to inherit her wisdom, her love, and the true meaning of family. Maria, however, found herself increasingly drawn into the lives of others, extending the circle of connection that Eleanor had so carefully cultivated. She volunteered at the local library, reading to children, her voice filled with the same warmth and patience that Eleanor had shown her. She attended community events, her presence a quiet testament to the values Eleanor had embodied. She discovered that Eleanor's legacy was not confined to the walls of the house. It was a living, breathing force, an inspiration that extended far beyond her immediate circle. She also found unexpected kinship with Mr. Abernathy. He was a man of quiet integrity, and as they dealt with the practicalities of Eleanor's estate, a genuine respect developed between them. He would sometimes share stories of other clients, of lives lived and lessons learned, and Maria found herself confiding in him, sharing her own reflections on Eleanor's life and the profound impact she had had. "Eleanor Vance," Mr. Abernathy said one afternoon as they reviewed some paperwork, his voice carrying a note of genuine admiration, "was a remarkable woman. She understood that true wealth is not measured in dollars and cents, but in the quality of one's relationships, in the depth of one's compassion. She possessed a clarity of vision that many people, even in their prime, seem to lack." Maria smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "She taught me that, Mr. Abernathy. She taught me that kindness is not a weakness, but the most potent force in the universe." The house continued to hum with a quiet, contented energy. It was no longer just Eleanor's house. It was Maria's home, a space imbued with the memories of a cherished friendship and the promise of a future built on the foundation of shared values. She found herself often talking to Eleanor, sharing the day's events, seeking her silent counsel. "You would have loved the new seedlings, Eleanor," she might say, gesturing to the newly planted rose bushes in the garden. "They're a particularly vibrant shade of crimson, just like you always admired." Or, "Mr. Whiskers is still terrorizing the biscuit tin, though marmalade has yet to develop such sophisticated tastes. He's more of a fan of dried salmon." These were not moments of manufactured sentimentality, but genuine expressions of a bond that had transcended the physical realm. Eleanor's influence was woven into the very fabric of Maria's existence, a guiding light that illuminated her path. As the seasons turned, Maria found herself increasingly sought after for her wisdom and her compassionate nature. People in the community, aware of her quiet dedication and her deep empathy, began to seek her out for advice, for a listening ear, for a comforting presence. She discovered that Eleanor's inheritance had not only provided her with financial security, but had also amplified her innate capacity for kindness, allowing it to blossom and spread outwards. One day, a letter arrived, bearing the familiar, albeit more polished, crest of David and Sarah Vance. Maria's heart gave a faint, involuntary lurch. She opened it with a sense of trepidation, expecting another barrage of legalistic pronouncements or veiled accusations. Instead, the letter was an invitation. A formal invitation to a gala event celebrating a significant business milestone for David's company. Maria reread the invitation, a faint smile playing on her lips. It was a testament to their continuing disconnect, their inability to grasp the true nature of Eleanor's legacy. They were celebrating material success, the accumulation of wealth, while completely overlooking the deeper, more profound forms of inheritance. She considered attending, perhaps to offer a quiet, subtle reminder of what truly mattered, but ultimately, she declined. It felt like an act of self-preservation, a decision to remain true to the values Eleanor had instilled in her, values that were so starkly absent in the world David and Sarah inhabited. Instead, Maria spent the evening with Beatrice, who had become a dear friend. They sat in Eleanor's sunroom, sharing stories and laughter, a quiet celebration of a life well lived and a friendship that had bloomed in its wake. It was a reminder that true wealth lay not in grand gestures or public accolades, but in the intimate moments of connection, the shared experiences that illuminated the human spirit. The house remained a sanctuary, a place of quiet reflection and enduring love. Maria knew that David and Sarah would likely never understand the true nature of Eleanor's final act. They would forever see it as an injustice, a betrayal. But Maria understood. She understood that Eleanor had not been disinheriting her children. She had been choosing her true heirs, those who had proven themselves to be repositories of kindness, of compassion, of genuine human connection. She continued to nurture the garden, to tend to the roses that Eleanor had loved, to keep the legacy of love and kindness alive. The story of Eleanor Vance was not one of familial obligation or the bitter legacy of neglect. It was a story of resilience, of self-discovery, and of the profound, transformative power of a single, unwavering act of compassion. And in Maria, that legacy found its most devoted guardian, its most ardent advocate, a living testament to the enduring truth that the greatest riches are not found in what we accumulate, but in the love we share and the kindness we sow. The house, once a silent witness to a mother's unrequited longing, was now a vibrant testament to a chosen family, a testament to a life that, in its final act, had found its truest, most profound meaning. The inheritance, as Maria understood it, was not merely of material possessions, but of a life philosophy, a deep-seated belief in the intrinsic value of human connection, a belief that Eleanor, in her wisdom and her grace, had passed on, not to those who were obligated by blood, but to those who were chosen by heart. And in that choice, Eleanor had found her own quiet, enduring peace.
Subscribe for the full story.